Will Smith bringing us out. Marc Malusis, Corey Parson with you. Show is Moose and Keith with her coming to you on a Memorial Day edition. Happy Monday. Hopefully everyone's enjoying their extended holiday weekend, and we're with you. And we got you for the next couple hours. We got a big Game 7 tonight between the Heat and the Celtics up there in Beantown. Good morning, Corey. How you doing, bud?
What's going on, Moose? Glad to be here on this good Memorial Day. Thanks to everybody that served. You know what I'm saying? The day was definitely about them. You may be having a good time today, but keep that in mind. But definitely looking forward to obviously we got one main event on the schedule tonight. Got the next 2 hours of good sports talk though, so looking forward to that. And we'll see how the rest of the day shakes out.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's the game tonight. Number one is you look at it. Everybody and their mother is just expecting, Boston to roll. Are they not?
I'm not. I still think it's the Miami Heat that's going to win this game. I think the Miami Heat are going to win this series. Boston has struggled at home this postseason. I'm not giving up on the Miami Heat. I think they win the series.
Tell me why. Tell me why. Why is there the belief in the Heat tonight?
I just think the Heat have been the better team. I think Boston has really come together and connected. They talked about that trip to Topgolf after Game 3, and I think that led to some connectivity. But I think the Miami Heat still are a little bit better team, more connected. I think they'll come out with a better game plan, and then they have a better head coach. And I just think that Miami is going to go in there and win this game. I believe Miami can go in there and win the game.
Yeah, can and will are two different things, right?
Yes, true. Very true.
I'm not saying it's an impossibility, and I understand that there have been strange things when you've looked at this, in terms of a scenario of number one, the NBA playoffs at times have been difficult to predict. I get it. Miami has surprised everybody by the fact that they are here, part of the play-in tournament, even though they were, a top seed in the Eastern Conference a year ago. They went through the Milwaukee Bucks in 5 games, eliminated the Knicks in 6 games, and then obviously had led this series 3 games to none. I think everyone is kind of surprised after what we witnessed in Game 3, and that was an absolute bloodletting by the Miami Heat over the Boston Celtics, that we're surprised we're here. I'm certainly surprised that we've got a Game 7 tonight in this series. But even with the struggles of Boston in the playoffs at home, when they've needed to win a game, they've won that game.
But against Philadelphia, though. See what I'm saying?
Wait, hold on a second. They did it against Miami.
True.
That's against Miami. They came back home for Game 5 after winning Game 4, and I thought Miami was going to win that game, and they won that game by daylight, won that game by double digits. Then they go down to Miami. They're a 3-point favorite for a Game 6 on Friday night. Or Saturday night, I should say, and they end up winning that game as well. Get a little bit lucky late. White, obviously, there off the smart miss after the 3 made free throws by Jimmy Butler when he's fouled by Al Horford on the shot with, 3 seconds to go in regulation. No issue with the defense that was called by Eric Spoelstra, but, Boston wins that game. Now they come back home, and listen, all the pressure is in the world is on the Boston Celtics tonight because they go into it now. The expectations, they're an 8-point favorite. Maybe it's 8.5 right now. A lot of people can't wait to bet on the Boston Celtics. So I know Miami's mentally tough. However, you've seen some cracks here in the armor of the Miami Heat, and to overcome that kind of a loss as well. Let's also factor in, Corey. That is an excruciating loss that they had on Saturday night, to be that close to cementing your trip to the NBA Finals, now to hop on a plane, head up to Boston, and get yourself prepared for a Game 7 tonight. That's a lot.
Yeah, no, listen, I agree with everything you said. There's a lot. It's a tall task at hand, but I think Eric Spoelstra, Jimmy Butler, Pat Riley, that Heat culture, realize that they still got a chance to do it. I think it's going to be a real tough thing to do to beat the Miami Heat in 4 straight games. But now, listen, Boston has a chance to do it right here. They got the building in their home court. The number is moving in the opposite direction. The number is down to 7.5, which indicate some sharp money hitting the Miami Heat. Now, that's just the point spread. But I think we get a good, close, tight game, and I think Miami pulls it off. I think it's a 1-2 possession game. I think Miami can come in there and pull it off. I just think that Miami is better equipped to go on the road and do this because, like you mentioned, Miami wins the first 3, and then the pressure is on them. Now, and when Boston won game 6 to tie it up, shout out to the Celtics for getting this thing tied up. Now the pressure's back on them, on Boston. And I think Miami's going to thrive in this scenario right here. Hopefully, we can get some Kyle Lowry down the stretch. I thought that was missing the other night from Miami's attack. Duncan Robinson missing those 2 humongous threes. That was big, but I think Miami's craftiness comes out tonight. I think he'd advance.
Yeah, but let's not also forget, yes, I mean, the idea of the pressure being on Boston. I mean, but let's also not forget and bury the fact that Miami is on the precipice of a historic collapse.
Yeah.
I mean, they were up 3-0 in this series, and now for an organization where everybody and their mother talks about the Heat culture and talks about Miami doing it the right way and the mental strength and the fortitude of an organization, the development of players, Pat Riley, Spoelstra, everything that you've gotten, Jimmy Butler, the work ethic, everything that you've seen here and heard about the Miami Heat. I mean, we are on the precipice. If Miami loses this game tonight, the Miami Heat have one of the great collapses, or the greatest,
the greatest collapse,
of NBA basketball in the playoff basketball. I mean, that hangs on that Heat organization. I mean, it really does. For Riley and company, that is there. So they go into it with a fair amount of pressure as well. They could continue to say, well, it's always the first of 4. I heard Bam Adebayo say that after the other night. Yes, Boston is expected to win. So you come all the way back from 3-0, down 0-3 to tie this series up at 3 games apiece, and you have the home game, and you're an 8-point favorite. Yes, the Celtics are expected to win tonight, so now the pressure of expectations are on them. But clearly, you look at Miami, this went from, a speed bump, to a molehill, now to an absolute mountain for the Miami Heat to mentally overcome the fact that they led this series at one point in time, 3-0. This series is now tied up at 3 games apiece, and you're playing a decided game 7 on the road in Boston. I'm not telling you, it could go one of 2 ways. Either it's a massive hit to Heat culture, or if they go in and, like you mentioned, you think Miami's going to win tonight. If they go into Boston and win game 7 tonight, well, then it would be a huge, cherry on top of the sundae for Heat culture to be able to mentally overcome that.
And I think this is where this team is best at, when they're using their mental prowess and their toughness, when they're playing through Butler, when they're going through, Riley, no rings, no rebounds, that Heat culture, all of those things that come into place. I think Miami is suited. I think this Miami team is better suited for this moment than the Boston Celtic team is.
Really? You've not seen that? Well, I mean, so
I haven't been that impressed with Boston
every game
in the second half of this season.
But hold on a second, Corey. But every game Boston has had to win, they've won.
Yeah, but I just look at the competition. Like, they've had to win the last 3 against the Heat. I get that. But, they had a game 7 versus the 76ers. The 76ers are fugazi. We know that. You can't compare these two.
Philadelphia to force that game 7 and game 6.
But it's Philadelphia.
Who cares?
It's Doc Rivers. It's not the Miami Heat. You probably couldn't get 2 more teams any different in the postseason as far as culture and being tough and battle tested. Philadelphia is on the low end of that spectrum. Miami's at the top of it.
No, I'm not going to go out there and defend Philadelphia. You still got to give them credit. I mean, everyone thought that there were a lot of people writing off the Boston Celtics after the Game 5 loss to the Philadelphia 76ers at home, going on the road in Philadelphia. And then Jason Tatum, exploded for 16 points in the fourth quarter and personally outscored the Philadelphia 76ers. I understand the 76ers utterly, collapsed and choked on their own tongues in game 7, gave you a putrid performance that cost Doc Rivers his job. But I can't all of a sudden just be like, oh, yeah, you know what? I trust Miami more. Last year, who won the decided game to go to the NBA Finals? It was the Boston Celtics over the Miami Heat.
And that's another reason why I think Miami is on payback tonight,
Boston's a strange team. They really are, because they're more talented than the Miami Heat. It's shame on them that they're at this point in this series where there is a game 7 tonight. Shame on them that they were down 3-0 in the series. It's a credit to them, though, and their talent level and their belief. The last 5 times that they've had games that they've had to win, they're 5-0. Game 6 in Philadelphia, 1. Game 7 at home against Philadelphia, 1. Game 4 on the road in Miami, 1. Game 5 at home against Miami, 1. Game 6 on the road in Miami, 1. I mean, they've been tested the last 5 times they've faced elimination. The Boston Celtics have won each and every one of those games, and they've got the best player on the court in Tatum.
And listen, they're hard to put away, but Miami's going to be equally as tough to put away. See, that's the thing about it is now it's now both teams are staring at, the prospects of going into the offseason. Both teams are staring at, you know what I'm saying, being the team that goes home and not the team that goes on to face the Denver Nuggets. No matter how this series ends, there's going to be a fan base that's going to be very disappointed. Because, yes, Boston did have this tremendous comeback to get back in this thing, but if their season ends tonight on their home court, you're going to look at how bad they played at home court this year. You're going to look at their struggles the second half of the season, and then you're going to look at their head coach and be like, did we make the right move? With Miami, everything you say about Heat culture really goes out the window. If you blow a 3-0 lead, you become the first team to do it. But one thing I will say is when you look at the NBA and when you look at the NBA playoffs, particularly – Memorial Day has been some very tremendous things have happened in the NBA on Memorial Day. And I think we get another one of those moments tonight. But you are going in and battling the ghost. See, it's ghost in that building. It's ghost with those fans. You know what I'm saying? But I think Miami is tough enough to do it.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I'm not. I mean, I'm not telling you that the Heat aren't this is a game where, and I think Barkley, I do doubt whether or not Miami's good enough to beat Boston in this spot. I really do. Like, I know maybe nothing should surprise us when we're watching professional sports. Strange things do happen on a day in, day out basis when you're watching it. I just don't see it. I mean, I don't. I mean, I think the Heat had 2 opportunities at home to eliminate the Boston Celtics, and they failed in both of them. They were, terrible performance in Game 4, and they were this close to winning Game 6. And now to go back on the road where, they won a game. I mean, they lost a game in Game 6 at home in which Boston hit 7 threes and shot 20% from behind the arc. I mean, how exactly, if you're the Miami Heat, do you lose that game? Because we all know the number. The number is 40%. Boston's a 3-point shooting team, as is basically – every team in the NBA, everyone's going out there and hoisting up 1 3 after another. And Miami lost that game. Like, you're dealing now with King Kong. I mean, that is what Miami's dealing with because Boston goes in. A, they're more talented. You agree with that? And now
Boston is a more talented team.
Boston's a more talented team. And then B, they've got a team now playing with a ton of confidence. And now Miami's trying to search for that confidence on the road in a Game 7. I mean, they better get ready for the wave early on in this game because, Boston's going to try and jump on top of them early. If they're able to withstand that, then maybe Miami can hang with them for the rest of the game. I just don't know if they can. I really don't. I mean, I think mentally to overcome the way that Game 6 came to an end and the fact that Boston won it miraculously, sometimes the basketball gods are shining on you, and that would be, a huge comeback, historic comeback for the Boston Celtics, and that would be a massive gag job by the Miami Heat if they lose this series.
If Boston, this is going to be a game to me that you want to wager live. Now, I'm going to take Heat money line pregame.
Okay.
And then when it gets, this first quarter is going to be critical. You know what I'm saying? Boston's going to be rocking. The joint's going to be lit. Memorial Day basketball, a Game 7 at one of the storied buildings in the National Basketball Association. If they don't come out and jump on a double-digit lead after the first quarter, you better go ahead and put your money on the Miami Heat. Because if Boston has to blow them out, if it's a close game, Miami's going to win it. Because Boston's going to get tight.
Maybe, maybe, but I also think I don't know. Like, are they? Like, I get that point, but if you're the Celtics, don't you really believe that they're thinking that we've made it difficult on ourselves, but this is our year. I mean, this is. I mean, like I mentioned, they're 5-0 in their last 5 games that they faced elimination. They've quote unquote played around with their food. Shame on them for being in this spot. And Corey, they are on the precipice of history here. Like, do I really believe if late in the game that Jason Tatum won't make a big time shot? Like, who am I leaning on for the Miami Heat? I mean, am I leaning on Bam Adebayo coming off a disastrous Game 6? Am I going to lean on Jimmy Butler, who up until the fourth quarter disappeared on Saturday night for the Miami Heat? Who am I going to lean on? Gabe Vincent, Max Strus? Who am I leaning on tonight if I'm the Miami Heat?
You're leaning on the team. You're leaning on the team. You're leaning on what the Miami Heat are, a team. not a collection of individuals. That's what makes them so attractive to me. Now here's the deal. As a born and bred New Yorker, Moose, I want the game. I don't want any one of these teams to win. You know what I'm saying? You think I want the Boston Celtic organization to have this in their arsenal now? The only team to come down from 3-0. They're already more difficult to deal with basically than any fan base in the NBA besides the Lakers. I don't want them to have this moment. So maybe I'm biased in that regard. But then you look at the Miami Heat. I also don't want to see them being an eighth seed to go to the NBA Finals like the Knicks did back in 1999 in that the year with that work stoppage. But when you just look at the history of these two teams recently, I think this is the NBA's premier rivalry right now. You know, these teams are playing the Eastern Conference Finals. What, 2 or 3 of the last 5 years, something like that. And I think this is an all the marbles type game. And I just think that Miami's going to have a little bit more tonight. I really do.
Yeah, I don't have that kind of confidence. I can't like I don't like. I'd be surprised. Like,
how did you feel when it was Yankees Red Sox going into that 7th game in 04?
The series was over. I thought Boston was going to win.
You was like, it's over. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the ballpark that night. I thought the Yankees, the pressure, even though number one, the Yankees had no pitching. That's number one. Number two is you get to that point where a team rallies from 3-0 down, then you're dealing with basically a tidal wave. And I don't think that Yankee team, number one, didn't have the pitching or the mentality to be able to withstand the fact that all of a sudden they led that series 3-0, and here they were at Yankee Stadium for a Game 7. And then what did that game ended up being? I mean, that game ended up being an absolute dumpster fire of a game for the Yankees, as Boston was celebrating early and often and made that an absolute laugher. I mean, I still remember sitting there, behind the Red Sox dugout, 5-6 rows behind the dugout. Went with a buddy of mine who had tickets through Verizon, right? So sitting there watching that game that night and listening to the Red Sox players celebrate, and I can still hear the banging of Johnny Damon's home run off of the facade of the upper deck as the crowd, because when he hit it, you knew it was gone. You just didn't know how far it was going to go, especially short porch and right field. And then when it hits the facade of the upper deck, the sound it made reverberated throughout the entire stadium.
Reverberated throughout the entire world. I remember.
Yeah, I mean, the place was eerily quiet, and all you heard were the Red Sox dugout and Red Sox fans, smattering of them throughout the stadium, celebrating, and rightfully so. I mean, that's historic. So you mentioned the question. I honestly think it would be, for me, better as a New Yorker for Miami to collapse after Riley decided to go to South Beach, and how that program and how that organization completely changed, whether it be, the drafting of Wade, bringing in Bosh and LeBron in free agency, right? The four trips to the NBA Finals there, winning the NBA title with Wade and Shaquille O'Neal, Riley stepping in for Van Gundy at that stage, then bringing in Jimmy Butler and everything that they've done here, the drafting of some of the players, the development of players, the quote-unquote Heat culture that they have developed down there in South Beach, and really what has, the disaster that has been the Knicks, ever since, their run to the NBA Finals in 99, and 24, 25 years ago, or 24 years ago now. It's been more of a failure than anything else. The Knicks have been more of an embarrassment. So for me, it'd be, for Miami to gag this series up would be utterly amazing.
Yeah.
Like, it just would. Like, I'll deal with the fact that Boston then would own the two greatest comebacks in the history of sports. One of them against the Yankees, the other one being up against the Miami Heat. But I would also then, and that would be difficult to deal with. It really would be.
Moose, I don't want that to happen.
No, I understand that. I know you don't want to have that to happen, but then, it's like playing Let's Make a Deal, right? Behind door one is that. Behind door two, though, is hearing, all the pretty people down there in South Florida that are showing up dressed up in their all whites, get ready to celebrate, all decked out there, tanned head to toe and everything like that. All the beautiful people in the world that are sitting courtside at Heat games then they've got a shoulder to cry on, because now they join the Yankees as one of the teams of having one of the biggest collapses in the history of sports. Like, that is utterly amazing. Riley with his slick back hair, getting ready to go see a Bruce concert, all decked out and all tanned up. And the fact that he faxed in his resignation to the Knicks, like, that to me is refreshing. So door A, you've got the Boston fan, which is going to be nauseating in their celebration. But here's door B, right? Here's option number 2 with Wink Martin. Here's option 2. Option 2 is the fact that the Miami Heat are going to cry, complain, and they're going to have to deal with the fact that everybody and their mother thought that this series was over, and this was a complete and utter choke job.
Yeah, I would rather deal with the. I would rather deal with
about Heat culture anymore, Corey.
I would rather hear about
out the window. You blow a 3-0 there's no culture.
There's no culture. You're right. You blow a 3-0 lead. That's anti-culture right there. That's the opposite of culture when that happens, and that's why I think this team is going to be able to go in there and pull it out. Now, Moose, you mentioned door A and door B. Listen, I just don't. I would rather deal with slick back Miami fan wearing all white, don't know the score. You know what I'm saying? Yay! Like we losing. Right. I'm sorry. I had to show off my job. You know what I'm saying?
It's the same Heat fan base that, remember during the NBA Finals, Heat and San Antonio Spurs, before Ray Allen hit that big 3, Game 6, they eventually won Game 7. They all left the game.
They were out the door.
They were all trying to get back into the arena when they realized Miami was making a comeback, and they shut the doors on them. They all left.
Well, listen, we don't really, we root for, we are, when we're talking Miami basketball, we're not talking one of the great home court advantages, because you know how the South Beach fan is. The South Beach fan is right there for the show.
Corey, a lot of that comes from jealousy. Listen, I'm jealous. I'm a Knicks fan, right?
Yeah, I'm jealous too. But Boston is worse. Boston is our rivals. That's worse.
To me, it's not because of Riley.
Okay, I can dig that. You know what I'm saying?
It's not because of Riley. And I loved Alonzo Mourning at Georgetown. Couldn't stand Alonzo Mourning as a Miami Heat. Tim Hardaway going down there. Vashawn Leonard hitting big-time threes. Thunder Dan Marley, right? Jack Ramsey doing games. And when he was, the legendary Jack Ramsey, when he was the color analyst for Miami Heat basketball. And just seeing what the Heat became under the guidance of Pat Riley. Riley going into meeting with LeBron and company out in Chicago before he decided to have the decision with Jim Gray on ESPN at the Girls and Boys Club up in beautiful Greenwich, Connecticut, when he was taking his talents to South Beach, but Riley walking into the room and dropping his championship rings on the table and saying, basically, I can get you these. Like, all of that. All of that is, as Donnie Walsh and the Knicks couldn't even get into the room. Like, all of that, like, to me, it's just like, yes, I've dealt with it all. Like, as a Knicks fan, I've dealt with it all. And all I've had was shoved down my throat for like the last 3 weeks is Heat culture. They lose tonight. I don't want to hear about Jimmy Buckets.
Yeah,
I don't want to hear about Spoelstra. I don't want to hear about the development of the 5 undrafted players, Strus and all that. They lose tonight in Boston, and I get it's Boston. I understand as a New Yorker. I know what that city is and that rivalry. I get it. I understand. One has to win. So what's the less of two evils? Give me a Boston win, because I actually like Tatum and I like Marcus Smart. I like some of the guys on that team. White's a good player. Jaylen Brown's a good player. I like some of the guys on that team. I'd take Boston winning over Miami. I think it's an interesting conversation, and I can understand, Corey, as a native New Yorker that you are, why you're going to choose Miami over Boston just because of that rivalry.
I'm not rooting for the city of Boston, and I do really think that Miami is better equipped for this situation, but it'll all play out, and we'll see how it goes down tonight. Like I said, looking at that number is coming in, so it looks like some sharp money is hitting the Miami Heat, and and I think rightfully so. I think it's going to be a nip and tuck game, and I think Miami wins a close one. Now, here's the deal. If Boston loses, then moving forward, you got to say to yourself, do they come back with the core of Tatum and Brown? What do they do with Joe Mazzulla? I don't think they get rid of him, obviously. Did a good job in his first year, but they got to think maybe we made the wrong decision getting rid of our head coach that had us there. And then here's the most interesting thing. Nobody's talking about the Denver Nuggets. When they play game 1 who's going to have the advantage? The team that's won because they've been playing the past 2 weeks, or the team that's been rested and that has the advantage of playing in a city with an elevated altitude?
Yeah, I would say it's I would say the team that would be Denver because they're rested. But it's going to be interesting that game one. I mean, you could make the argument that the team that's just getting off of it, but you're also talking about the wear and tear, and now you're going up against the team in Denver with their fresh legs.
Yeah, and then you possibly, the team that had the best record, the team that was the number 1 seed overall. So, yeah, I think one of the things you can do, what I'm saying, if you're wagering on this, I think I would go pretty heavy on the Nuggets in game one.
I probably would agree with that. So you're on Miami money line to win the game, and you're also going to think about and looking at trying to bet this game live tonight.
Yeah, and the live thing is going to be after the first quarter. What does it look like now? First quarter is tie game. Then I probably won't double down, but I might see what the line is and take some points. You don't want to really bet on the same team twice. But if Boston comes out and opens up early, they're going to blow them out.
Referees for tonight's game: Scott Foster, brothers, John Goble.
Scott Foster. The NBA loves to do the Scott Foster thing because they love it. They know the narrative about Scott Foster is out there, but they put him on games like this because they know people are going to talk about it. So, and I can imagine Scott Foster not being good for Boston.
Yeah, I could imagine. I mean, you're going to tell me. I mean, I've seen enough of Scott Foster.
Me too.
I really have. Foster brothers, John Goble. I mean, that's what you're getting tonight up in Beantown for a game 7. Listen, I don't think for Miami, we've talked about the negativity of how it would hit. Now, nobody's going to lose their job, right? And I think based on the way that Boston has responded in this series, should they lose tonight, Joe Mazzulla is not losing his job. The idea of Mazzulla losing his job would have been if the Celtics get swept. And should Boston lose tonight, should anything happen? Do I think anything's going to happen with Brown and Tatum? Here's the one narrative that was there early when this team was really struggling in this series, especially after their Game 3 performance where they played like they basically didn't give a damn and got utterly and completely, and I think Jaylen Brown used the word, we got embarrassed. They responded in Game 4. There's been a narrative, though, early on in the series, Corey, when you looked at it, that this was a Celtic team that was not together, more individualistic than anything else. Is it a group that really, cares and plays with one another? I think with the way that they've responded in this series, I think that narrative is nonsense. I don't think a team that's not together. Sorry, Corey. I don't think a team that's not together could come back from 3-0 down and make this a series and force a game 7. As talented as they are, listen, they are talented. They are not like Showtime mid-80s talented Lakers. They're that's it. So the whole idea of Brown and Tatum can't play together, or that they're not unified, or it's not. You don't come back from 3-0 down just based purely on the fact that you're a more talented team. You have to play together, and they have played together in this series in the last 3 games, and that's why we've got a game 7 tonight.
So they went after that blowout loss in game 3, they kind of powered down and they took a trip to Topgolf, right? It's been reported. And that seemed to be a connecting moment for the team, where the team got connected again, where they got back to fighting for each other and not being a group of individuals. And it's simple. It's so crazy how something that simple can reconnect the team. And I look at what you're seeing right now in college football and in the NFL is with these OTAs and colleges starting to get the kids in for summer school. This is the time when you work on getting your team connected. This is the time when you work on building that culture. And what you see with Mazzulla was he was smart enough to realize that the team was fractured. And that was able to bring them back together. And you know what? It's working right now. So we see how Miami gets their team back together now. Because, Moose, here's the bottom line. In these type of situations and scenarios, you have to play for your teammate. You know what I'm saying? That's what it has to be. You have to have game plan discipline. You got to know the box out because my man is here. You got to be able to hit free throws because he's depending on me. You know what I'm saying? So it's really, this game is all about which team can be the most selfless.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think Barkley made a great point. It's not really about the X's and the O's. Paraphrasing here, what Charles had to say after Game 6. This is really a matter of what's in between the ears, and confidence and belief, and that he thinks it's not just about the guys who are on the court. It's really what's going on and the confidence level and really the mindset that you have going into this game. And I'm not doubting Miami's tough. This would be, all-time tough. Because Boston is more than just has a little bit of life. They believe, and they're a more talented group. And if Boston goes out there and hits 6 threes tonight and shoots the ball really, really poorly, then Miami's gonna have an opportunity to win. I just don't envision that happening. Like, I think you're gonna look back and the Heat are going to look back on Game 6, a missed opportunity. They're going to look back on the fact that they let Boston get up when they basically, had them and had a complete stranglehold of this series. And now you've let a more talented team gain a belief that they are going to win this series. And I think they're dealing with an all kind of different type of monster tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. But bottom line of the matter is this: if Boston does pull this out, I do like what you said. We don't have to hear about heat culture no more. That's done. They might as well change the hashtag.
Right. Yeah, the Grim Reaper will be out to heat culture.
Yeah, exactly. Change that hashtag.
The ditch digger will be there with the last shovel of dirt on heat culture. The other thing is, here's the one thing: Butler's got to be brilliant tonight. Like, he can't have a game in which he's passing it off. Like, these are the games where you need your best player to be brilliant. Like, it can't be about Caleb Martin shooting threes, Max Strus shooting threes, Duncan Robinson shooting threes, Gabe Vincent, Kyle Lowry. This has got to be a game in which Jimmy Butler, you go back to Game 5. Jimmy Butler took 10 shots. He scored 14 points. Like, Jimmy Butler can't take 10 shots tonight. Like, he just can't. Like, he's got to be able to. They've got to push the tempo. He's got to be more offensively involved like he was in the fourth quarter for the Miami Heat. Like, this is his team. He's the best player on the team. We talk about him being an all-time great playoff performer. Butler's got to show up, and he's got to ball out tonight. Because if he doesn't, he can't pass it off. Like, he really can't. Like, tonight's the night where, the double team's coming. You got to figure out a way to still be able to generate offense, get in the rim, or get to the rim, or get into that mid-area jumper, or get fouled and go to the free throw line. So Butler's got to be more. It's got to be Butler and Bam Adebayo. And Butler was great in the fourth quarter, Game 6. The first 3 quarters of Game 6, Butler and Adebayo were dreadful.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And it would be funny based on this, the thing that would be funny about this whole scenario is the Miami Heat got up 3-0 in the conference finals and then went back to being the team they were in the regular season.
Yeah.
They look like the regular season Miami Heat now. They can't hit the 3. They're discombobulated. They lack game plan discipline. There's nothing on defense. It's like they became the team they were all season. When they was playing the Knicks, everybody was Larry Bird. You know what I'm saying? And now they're going back to being a Miami Heat team that looked like they had no direction on the roster. So it's frustrating. Let me tell you something. Betting the NBA playoffs is a tall task because you never know where these series are going to go. I watch this league 82 nights a year, the whole thing, the whole storyline, and it looked like the Denver Nuggets were the best team in the league all year. And you had other teams sprinkle in throughout times and stuff like that. Boston was a good hot start. Miami's been the best team in the postseason though, and I think they can pull it together one more time.
We'll see what happens tonight. I like the Celtics, but I've been wrong in these NBA playoffs. Corey likes the Miami Heat on the money line and would also sprinkle a little bit based on how that game is being played out early after quarter number 1 and see if there's a live betting opportunity. He's Corey Parson. I'm Marc Malusis. The show is Moose and Keith. We're coming into on a Monday. It is Memorial Day. Obviously, remember all those men and women that serve our country. It should be this day and every single day and all the lives that have been lost for our quality of life and what we do here in this great country. So remember to thank a service member and thank those that have served our country over the course of time. It's Moose and Keith on this Monday. We'll come back. We'll continue the NBA conversation. Want to get Corey's thoughts on Carmelo Anthony, number retirement. We'll get into that with the Knicks. Plenty of baseball, some NFL news as well. If you're just joining us, Heat Celtics Game 7 tonight. NBA announced Scott Foster will be the head referee tonight. Tony Brothers as well, John Goebel. Those are the three that are going to be.
That's a hell of a crew right there.
That is a hell of a crew. There's no doubt about it. And if you're a Celtic fan, you probably have a little bit more confidence. You're in good hands with that officiating crew tonight up there in Beantown. We'll get into that. We'll do that next. It's Moose and Keith on a Monday right here, Better Sports Network.
Moose and Keith. Weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern.
The word genius is there. Bob Glover, it describes him. Bob, so when's the last time that Twitter defeated you? Because I've been defeated by Twitter today.
I'll tell you how Twitter defeated me one time. I had the mistaken impression that the year that Troy Polamalu won the Defensive Player of the Year, it looked like it was going to go to Clay Matthews Jr., and I tweeted it. And there was a guy on the media bus. He was like, oh, yeah, he's got it, a guy I trust. I won't tell you who it was, but his initials are Mike Garafalo. So I went with it. Got a DM from Rich Eisen, NFL Network. He goes, you sure about that? I go, oh, man. Oh, I just got this wave. Because, like, accuracy to me is really important.
Yeah.
So I'm literally on the media bus. We're just getting back from media day. We are slipping and sliding in Dallas. It's snowing. I get off the bus. I open my laptop. I am hunched over. And I just, like, literally people are passing me. Bob, what's wrong? And it was Polamalu. And Adam Schefter had retweeted me. Trey Wingo had retweeted me. I'm like, oh, I'm dead.
So when it's Polamalu, then how do you handle that? Like, what was the subsequent tweet
I think
afterwards?
I said, got some bad Twitter info. I didn't put Garafalo's name on there. I had to
10 years later, you can out him. I like that. Yeah.
He wouldn't mind that. He knows the stories. So.
Yeah.
He actually said to me, hey, Bob, I think you might have jumped the gun on that. I was like, oh, crap. There we go.
Campus to Canton on the Better Sports Network.
Would Dion bench Shedeur?
I don't think he would.
Like, how bad would it have to be? Because we've seen horrendous quarterback play from this Colorado team for the last, 5 years? JT Shroud, Brandon Lewis, just terrible quarterback play. Like, they were 131st, which is dead last in pass EPA per play. Obviously, it will be better, but how bad does it have to be for him to bench his own son? Like, I'm not sure he will ever either, like, especially with the attitude that he came in with.
If they don't get Rashada, who do they bench him for this year anyway? I don't know that there's another answer on that roster that you go to. They don't really have a guy behind him, so I don't even know if we would know the answer to that until the next year, assuming that he doesn't declare for the draft, he returns, they bring somebody else that's competent and behind him.
If they're going to do this the Lincoln Riley way, next year would be the class to bring somebody in. Shedeur Sanders is going to be a third-year player, so he's going to play 2023. I don't think he's declaring for the 2024 NFL draft, so he's going to play in 2024 and then declare for the 2025 NFL draft. And let's remember this, he hasn't had a full recruiting cycle at Colorado. He will have that next recruiting cycle, so maybe he could get one of these class of 2024 quarterbacks that would come to Colorado.
However you're invested in sports, from betting to fantasy, collectibles, and more, join our community on Better Sports Network.
Moose and Keith with you on this Monday, Memorial Day, on the Better Sports Network. Corey Parson in for Keith. I'm Marc Malusis, of course. We talked a little bit about Game 7 tonight. Get the popcorn out between the Heat and Celtics up in Beantown. Tip time right around 8:30. A lot of buzz here in the New York area, Corey, because I know you've been frustrated by the Knick organization, but clearly, you look at one of the players that recently just retired last week and had a nice announcement, and it was well done on social media, Instagram and on Twitter, that he was retiring from the game, and that being Carmelo Anthony, who was part of the same came into the NBA part of the same draft class as LeBron James. We know what he did at Syracuse, but a lot of clamoring here in New York that for his 6.5, 7 years here with the Knicks, that the Knicks at some point should retire his number 7. Now, the last player that have his number retired was Patrick Ewing, You look at the guys that I believe there's 8 in total that have had their numbers retired by the Knicks organization. 6 of them have won championships with the Knicks. The other 2 did not. Dick McGuire being one, the other one being Patrick Ewing, who went to the NBA Finals in '94. Carmelo Anthony was, here in New York. I think his best days are in Denver. The Denver fan base can't stand him. So he's not going back there. We know Jokic is wearing his former number with the Denver Nuggets as well. So, what's your case on the idea or argument for or against Carmelo Anthony having his number retired?
It's real interesting. Knicks fans have always had a love-hate relationship with their superstar players. You see it recently with Julius Randle. They love Brunson. They can't stand Randle.
Right.
Knicks fan didn't like Patrick Ewing down the stretch. They had issues with John Starks, despite loving him as well. I think they should retire Carmelo Anthony's number, not only because of, listen, this is one of the NBA's all-time great players, but he was solid as a New Yorker. He had some of the greatest performances in the history of Madison Square Garden, as a basketball player. So you take it into consideration. I think he embraced the idea of being a New Yorker. Obviously, his son playing for Long Island Lutheran, so he is his family is a family of New Yorkers. That's what they consider themselves. That's what they've shown us. You know what I mean? Listen, the block against the Pacers. That's what you think about when you think of Carmelo Anthony's legacy as a New York Knick. The great game against the Bulls, putting up 60-something points that night, whatever. I think he's had enough big moments and is a big enough of a star to have his number retired at Madison Square Garden, which is a tremendous accomplishment.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Why not? Why? Because of no championship?
I don't think he did enough.
That's what I was talking about.
They went to the playoffs 3 times. They won 1 playoff series during his tenure here in New York. I'm not telling you that he's not part of the community and doesn't have great outreach and has helped a lot of people. And it's great that he's settled down on Long Island and, you can come back to Madison Square Garden and have all the standing ovations that he wants and people could celebrate. What exactly, if we look back, are we going to look back on Carmelo's days as the halcyon days of the New York Knicks? Do you look back on it and say, yeah, it was an unbelievable success? Now you want to say as much as, you look at that 62-point performance against the Bobcats in 2014, which set a Garden record. And it was a great individual night. It really was. It wasn't one of those nights. Like I look back on the days when, Kobe and LeBron or Michael dropped in double nickel as better nights at Madison Square Garden than that night. For Carmelo Anthony. High watermark for team wins was 54, right? And they had that 54-win season. They won 1 playoff round. That was it for Carmelo Anthony. I don't know. I just don't think he did enough.
Listen,
I like Carmelo. I went to Syracuse. I celebrated them winning a national championship, and beat Kansas down there in New Orleans at the Dome. And it was an unbelievable night. And the block by Akeem Warwick on Keith Lee. Like that was an unbelievable night. I just don't think Carmelo Anthony did enough to have his number retired. And I also don't think it's some great insult either. Like that's the other thing too. Like, and you could be one of 2 different ways. Like you could look at organizations. There are some organizations, the Mets under the Wilpons, that basically, didn't celebrate any of their past. Like they opened up Citi Field. It was an ode to Ebbets Field. You walk into the Jackie Robinson Rotunda. The seats were in orange and blue. It was kind of an ode to the San Francisco Giants, to the New York Giants and the Brooklyn Dodgers. There was no Mets Hall of Fame. There was none of that. So you look at it, it was almost like, well, they didn't want to embrace the history of their franchise. So you had the Mets then. Now you have the Yankees. The Yankees basically retire anybody's number. That if you played on a championship team, they just want to have a day. Like guys, like it's not for the greats of the greats. It's for anybody that happened to be great during a time with the Yankees. If you look at Carmelo Anthony and you look at the Knicks haven't retired a number. You mean to tell me, okay, if I'm going to retire Carmelo Anthony's number, how does Bernard King not have his number retired?
Well, Bernard King should have his number retired. That is the case. Bernard King should have his number retired. Maybe they need to. They listen. 2 things can be right. Maybe they need to right 2 wrongs and retire the numbers of both of those players. I wouldn't go better Boston saying Allen Houston. I wouldn't go as far as Allen Houston because he wasn't the player that Carmelo Anthony was. But listen, Carmelo Anthony really was in New York doing some very lean years. Now let's just think about how Carmelo Anthony got there. That Knicks team was rolling until they traded their pieces away to get Melo. They should have waited and got him as a free agent.
Yeah, but
that was a disaster. That kind of ruined it from the beginning.
All right, fair enough. But Corey, he didn't want to wait. Why didn't he want to wait? Because the CBA was changing, and he wanted to get the long-term deal under the old CBA. So he wanted to maximize his value. That's why Carmelo Anthony didn't want to wait till NBA free agency. You're right. The Knicks would have been there wouldn't be lean years. They would have been really, really good if you threw Carmelo Anthony into that mix of players that they dealt out to Denver in order to get him there. But Carmelo Anthony wanted to get paid. So he's also the same guy that was jealous of Jeremy Lin. Remember that story?
Listen, I don't know if that was really the case, him being jealous of Jeremy Lin. I think that was more talk than anything else, that he'd be jealous of Jeremy Lin.
What about the fact he didn't want to adapt his style to what Phil Jackson was trying to do? Now, listen, Phil was a knucklehead, and Phil didn't work.
Are we really going to do that, Phil Jackson?
I mean, listen, what he did he adjust his style? No, he didn't adjust his style, but there was drama and nonsense and BS when he was here as well. Like, it wasn't like he was always the happy camper. Were we not continuously taking the temperature of Carmelo Anthony, whether he was into it or not? Like, I'm seeing all these stories being written about Carmelo. He's always smiling, and he really wanted to win, and all of these things. The question is, did he win? No, he didn't win.
This is what I'm talking about. Knicks fans have always had an issue with their superstar players. Patrick Ewing was not always. Remember how people would boo Patrick Ewing? Remember when Charles Oakley would shoot and the whole garden be like, no. New York Knicks fans think they know more than the people on the court. So they've always been overly critical of their superstar basketball players. And yes, Melo had his moments. First of all, the Phil Jackson thing was a complete disaster. Probably did more terrible things for the organization than Isaiah Thomas did. You got to think Melo was there through some bad Knicks teams. When they finally did get a culture and win 54 games, they came up short. But who were they supposed to beat? They were supposed to beat the Heatles with LeBron and Wade. That's who they were going up against. That was a tough time.
I'm not telling you that it wasn't a tough time or it wasn't a difficult time, but if you're an all-time great player, a player that I'm going to retire your number, aren't you able to overcome that to a certain extent or no? I mean, Carmelo Anthony overcame none of it. I mean,
if you go into
like you look at it, let me ask you, like 20 years from now, and people look back, were Carmelo Anthony's best days in Denver or New York?
Carmelo Anthony was when he was lighter in Denver, and he was much more explosive player in Denver. But remember,
he was better.
Listen, people talk crazy about John Morant right now. Do you remember how Carmelo Anthony's career started? With all kind of crazy videos and stop snitching and a lot of the same things that Ja's getting in trouble for, Melo was doing back then in a world with less social media. So him and J.R. Smith in Denver, they almost drove George Karl crazy. You remember that. Now, New York got an older, more sophisticated version of Melo, but yeah, they was taking the temperature. Yeah, and more out of shape. Yeah, they were taking his temperature, but that's what the organization was. You know, it's always like superstar players on teams through the lean years, like DeMarcus Ware in Dallas, or you know what I'm saying, or not Aaron Rodgers, but you know, we've seen great players on teams going through bad seasons, and I think that's what Melo was. But I think he did enough to get his number retired. The Knicks probably need to retire some more numbers, to be honest with you, if they don't have Bernard King retired.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, Bernard King's number is not retired, and he should be. I fall on it where I just don't think he did enough. Like, but I would be a heavy grader. Like, I would be a heavy marker.
Sure.
Like, not every I don't think every, great player that plays for your team, I think they have to separate themselves in order to have the distinct honor of having their number retired for all of eternity. Like that's a massive kind of a massive accomplishment. And I would be a little bit of a hard marker, just like I'd be a hard marker for people getting into the Hall of Fame. I don't think it's the Hall of Very Good. I think it should be a separation for those that were really special athletically in that endeavor in order to be a Hall of Fame. So not everyone should be it. And it's not an insult to Carmelo Anthony. Like, if you told me the Denver Nuggets were retiring his number, I could understand that. Like, he was a better player in Denver and more explosive player and won more in Denver than he did in New York.
That's organizational. The winning more is organizational.
Well, but you are as a leader, you're getting judged by it, right? You as the best player on the team, we can both agree that he was a better player in Denver.
Yeah.
I understand he led the league in scoring with the Knicks in 2013. He finished, I think, third in the MVP voting that year. Was never going to win the MVP, but finished third in the MVP voting. High watermark was 54 wins, won one playoff round. You look out in Denver, biggest success was going to the Western Conference Finals 2009. They lost to the Lakers, but was in the playoffs each and every year as a member of the Denver Nuggets. So I look at him more, if I'm to throw the question out there, 20, 30 years from now, when you think about Carmelo Anthony, you think about it, I think more people are going to think about him as a Denver Nugget than they will think about him as a New York Knick. Now, if the Knicks go out there and retire his number, well, then that could change the discussion, change the argument, and change the perception of Carmelo. I just look at him as a better player when he was in Denver.
So the NBA doesn't have a Hall of Fame per se. The Hall of Fame is the Basketball Hall of Fame, and obviously,
where everybody gets it.
Yeah, Carmelo, exactly. He got the Syracuse history, Olympic gold medals, and stuff like that. So he's a Basketball Hall of Famer. Would he be an NBA Hall of Famer? If the Hall of Fame was regulated just to your NBA career, would Carmelo Anthony be an NBA Hall of Famer?
Ninth all time in scoring, so he'd probably make it.
But the Knicks shouldn't retire his number. A dude who's top 10 all time in scoring.
I don't. But let me ask you this: if you look at it, were his more dynamic days, more impactful days, best days in Denver as compared to New York?
Well, if you look at the results, but I think you're comparing apples to oranges. You got a better organization with better pieces around. Now, he forced his way out, certainly did. I don't believe him and George Karl was getting along. I think that was an issue, and I don't think you can blame just George Karl or just Carmelo for that. He forced his way to New York, and yes, it was that 154-win season, that one playoff victory over the Boston Celtics, a series. The Knicks tried to give that series away too, but I just listen. You're going up against the Wade and the Heatles and all of that stuff. I think it's tough to. I think, like I said, I think Knick fan has always been very critical of their superstar players. I'd put him in the rafters in the Garden, but I would put Bernard King in there too.
Well, let me ask you: in 7 years with the Knicks, right? 7 seasons. He played 412 games. That's it in the regular season with the Knicks. He played 564 with Denver. His scoring average at Denver 24.8, scoring average with the Knicks 24.7. So, let's look at it, right? First year with the Knicks was a combo year.
Half a season.
Played 55, right? So first year played 27 games with the Knicks, played 50 games in total. Played 50 games with Denver. He averaged 26 points. First full season with the Knicks, 2011, 2012, averaged 22 a game, nearly 23. Then he had the big year in which he led the league in scoring at 28-7. Then he went 27-4, 24-2, 21-8, 22-4 was his final year. At 32 years old, he averaged 22 points a game before he went out to Oklahoma City. And then he basically lived a nomadic lifestyle in the NBA, where it was Oak City, it was Portland, it was the Lakers, Houston. I mean, so played for a lot of different teams toward the tail end as his career started to wind down. Bad body player, didn't age particularly well. I don't know. Like, I understand what Carmelo was as a player, and I think it's people don't want to be disrespectful when someone retires and just want to point out like all the positives of him as a player, Corey. And I'm not telling you like I can appreciate that. You don't want to like jump on somebody after they basically say, I'm done doing this. I'm going to go do something else with the course of my life. I just don't look at Carmelo Anthony as a longtime Knick fan and say, yes, I hands down would retire his number, because I look more back on his days as a Knick, not all of his own doing, as more disappointing than I do successful.
I think the organization was more disappointing. And I think one of the things that Melo ran up against was the game changed while he kind of was in his prime. You know what I mean? Like the game went to a heavy 3-point shooting game from a mid-range get to the basket game. Carmelo Anthony game was mid-range, get to the basket, show your power strength, size and speed, and until he got a little bit, like me, around the midsection. Then you saw his game change, but he never developed into a dominant three-point shooter. And I think that was problematic looking at the back end of his career. So the Knick fan look at it, I kind of take that away because I look at how Knick fans always wanted their superstar players to be Michael Jordan, to be LeBron James, to be the guys that's won all the championships. That didn't happen in New York. That's not how it went. So they immediately turned their ire to that player. Listen, Carmelo Anthony ain't LeBron James.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Patrick Ewing was not Michael Jordan. Doesn't mean that their career should be thrown away. I just think, listen, I think Melo has popularity on his side as well. He's beloved in Madison Square Garden now, not like it was when he was playing.
No, he is. You're right about that. I mean, he came back and he was like the conquering hero in the NBA playoffs. And because it's recency, people remember him. Bernard King should be treated just as well as a conquering hero because this, Corey. I mean, Bernard King, before he suffered that knee injury, was good as dynamic a scorer in the NBA as you've seen.
Yeah, listen, he got it done on so many different occasions. But here's the thing: the lack of the 3-point shot, Moose, is problematic. I was just thinking about New York basketball, right? When is the luck going to change?
Well, I think Brunson could be in the Institute of Change. It's kind of general. Like, what do you mean by luck?
You one draft pick away from Steph Curry, that type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? One pick away from John Morant.
I don't know. I mean, Corey, that's a great question. I'm not sure. I mean, I think Brunson's the real deal. I think what he did this season is real and genuine. I think now is what the pieces you put around Jalen Brunson, and you've got to get more scoring. You've got to be able to knock down some shots on the outside.
And that's Julius Randle. They're going to need. They need some of them pieces that Miami got.
Well, Manuel quickly. I think they need a better caliber player. I think you need a guy. I think Barrett would benefit with Randle not being on the team, but the concern you have if you're the Knicks is Julius Randle's a guy that's uber consistent during the regular season. So I know that he's not this unbelievable playoff performer, but in an age of load management, in an age, Corey, where guys like to take time off or banged up or injured, let's be honest. I mean, Julius Randle, outside of the ankle injury that he caused him to miss the last 8-9 games of the Knicks regular season, Julius Randle's been there. He's been a guy that Tom Thibodeau has been able to lean on. So it's difficult for an organization to scoff at a guy that was an all-star this year in the regular season. Whether you think Julius is good enough to take your team to the next level or not, there's something to be said for how consistently good he is during the regular season. He might be easier to defend in a playoff series, and there are limitations there. But now you need to bring in somebody that is going to be just as consistent as Julius in the regular season, but is going to be able to raise the level of his game in the postseason.
So do you get rid of him now to go look for that mythical player? You see, because I understand Knick fan tearing it down because, see, the thing with Randle is not his game, it's his body language. When he misses a shot, he put his head down, clap his hands, run back to the bench. His body language is poor. And you know how Knick fan are. They jump on stuff like that and they'll beat you into the ground. Kissing the wife after the game and all kind of foolishness. But when you really think about it, this is a team that just overachieved. I don't want to say overachieved. This is a team that I think I've been on this. Listen, Miami's a better team. I think the Knicks would have beat Boston. So I'm not so quick to want to run Julius Randle like a lot of Knicks fans are. But is he going to be able to handle the New York City media, Randle? Moose, you know better than I am. You're there, following these dudes and broadcasting on these dudes every day. You've seen times in the past, Randy Johnson comes to mind immediately. He couldn't handle the New York media. Numerous Mets come to mind. They couldn't handle New York. It seems like Randle can handle the criticism. I wouldn't be so quick to run him.
Yeah, I think he can. I think though, at times he's been probably his own worst enemy, where whether it be with teammates, coaches, or even the media after games, I think he responded this past year where he had a down year 2 years ago, and I don't think he was in the greatest of shape, Corey. And I think he grew really, really frustrated. I think the presence of Brunson helps. I think if you keep Randall, though, then you might have to figure out. I don't know if you could consistently have Brunson, Randall, and Barrett being your top three with the limitations they have outside of Brunson shooting from the outside. Like Barrett, you are at
where are you at on Barrett right now?
I'm disappointed. I thought after they paid him, I thought he underwhelmed even defensively this year. He's the same player he has been since he left Duke. I know he's young, and I know he played well in the playoffs, but at times he played well in that Heat series.
He did. That's what I'm saying. He had a good playoffs. He's those first two games in Cleveland. He was not good. When he got to the Garden for Game 3 versus Cleveland, all the way till it ended. Just coming those last games against Miami, he was not. But to me, I think he really showed his true value in this postseason. See, and this is my thing with Knick fan. Knick fan is very critical. Sometimes I think unfairly, and that's why you don't want Carmelo Anthony in the Ring of Honor because he didn't bring you no championship. That's why you have a hard time with RJ Barrett because he's not developing on the level of some of these other younger players. But I really think I would be coming into the season very pessimistic about Barrett. Going into next season, I'm optimistic. I worry about quickly in moments, though.
Yeah, I think I'm a little pessimistic at what Barrett is because I think he's the same player that he was at Duke.
You think he already topped out?
Well, I think he's just the same. He's the same guy. Like he just has. I mean, I think he's physically a little bit better. I think he's left-handed oriented. Really can't drive with his right hand and can't shoot.
You do the 2019 draft over. Ja and Zion go 1-2. You go Barrett, Garland, DeAndre Hunter at 3.
No,
I don't want to put Jordan Poole. Let's put Jordan Poole in there too because he wasn't that draft.
Yeah,
price.
no, I would take Garland.
Okay, I think I would take Garland as well.
Yeah, I would take Garland. Ball in the hand, I would take Garland. That's it. But I mean, clearly, if you had to do it all overall, even with everything going on away from the court, I mean, you would take Ja number 1 overall.
I would take Zion.
Zion barely plays, though. He's played 114 games in 3 years.
I think what Zion does at the box office makes Zion worth it.
Yeah, but don't you have to play at some point?
That's true. I mean, you know what I'm saying? But when he does play, he's very good. He's all pro.
I agree with you, but Corey he's not physically there. Like his body doesn't hold up. Like I don't. Like I agree with you. I don't disagree. I'd love to see, like, it made me ecstatic when Zion's face lit up about playing in Madison Square Garden. The idea of the Knicks ever having Zion Williamson in a Knick uniform would be great, but he barely plays. Like,
would you trade Julius Randle for Zion?
Oh, no doubt, yeah.
There you go.
I would, but that's not but the point being is that's trading a guy like Randle where I've seen the limitations. If you're asking me number 1 overall, if we're redrafting that, yeah, I think you would take Ja Morant number 1. I think Zion would go 2. And I think Garland would go 3. And RJ Barrett wouldn't be in the top 3.
Yeah. I think that would. Listen, I don't have a problem. You know, listen, a lot of people in 2019 said that Josh should have been the first pick of that draft. You know what I'm saying? I remember specifically Mike Francesa going back and forth with callers saying that that Zion was going to be a health problem. He was right on that one. Zion has been that issue. And listen, it doesn't seem like it's getting any better. Like, you never really hear good news out of New Orleans about Zion.
No,
like,
you don't hear any good news, and you get concerned about him maintaining his weight. That's the other thing. When you look,
if you're fat at 18, you're probably gonna be fat at 25. If you're fat at 25, you can be fat at 30.
Well, especially when there's a difference between being athletically gifted fat and just kind of lazy fat.
Yeah, and I think Zion is trending too.
I mean, think about the amount of calories Zion Williamson is burning. And then to have the intake that he has, to not be – what was the commercial? Was it like a Taco Bell, or what was the commercial he did where he was sitting on the couch and people were like slack-jawed, stunned at the way he looked? Remember, he was hurt? And
yeah.
Like, what was that commercial? Remember that commercial? Was it a game?
I think it was a Mountain Dew commercial.
Mountain Dew.
It was a Mountain Dew commercial.
Yeah. I forget what it was, but yeah,
it was him and Zach LaVine playing a video game.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Remember, we're like, oh my God, he's huge. Like Zion looked like is like it, and I'm not telling you that when he's maintains his weight, he's chiseled. He's a freak. Zion Williamson's a freak, but to be unbelievably great, you got to be available and you got to be on the court.
No doubt about it. I definitely agree with you 100% on that one right there. So, but no, I think that's a fascinating draft class. And, once again, it's a class where, the Knicks just missed. So, but moving forward, I think you got to be optimistic. I like Leon Rose. I like what's my man, Worldwide West. I like them. I trust them with the organization. Put it like this.
I would agree with that.
In years past, I'd be like, let me run it.
Yes.
Now I'm like, okay, let them do it.
We're in agreement there. He's Corey Parson. I'm Marc Malusis. We'll come back. We'll talk about the fantasy impact of the release of DeAndre Hopkins by the Arizona Cardinals. Get into a little bit of football as well. Touch upon our Rodgers and the Jets. Get into the future of LeBron James, too. It's a Memorial Day edition. Happy Monday. Thanks for being with us. He's Corey Parson. He's the fantasy exec. I'm Marc Malusis. It's Moose and Keith on a Memorial Day Monday right here, Better Sports Network.
Monday Night Rants with Edward Rouse on Better Sports Network.
Do you believe in the Madden curse? Do you think that's a real thing?
I did. Now, I don't think it's as big of a deal anymore, but it was a real thing for a solid 10, 15 years.
Yeah, it was Sean Alexander, LaDainian Tomlinson, Peyton Hillis.
LT was never on the cover. I know that.
Was he not? I thought he was one. Okay, well, you do know all the covers of everything.
Yeah, okay. So if you want, I could do this real quick. So Garrison Hurst is the first official Madden cover athlete, 1999. 2000, I believe they still put John Madden on the cover. And then 2001 is where it all started. So 2001, you have Eddie George. 2002, Dante Culpepper. 2003, Marshall Falk. 04, Michael Vick. 05, Ray Lewis, first defensive player on the cover.
Okay.
06, Donovan McNabb. 07, Sean Alexander.
Okay.
08, Vince Young. 09, Brett Favre.
Okay.
10 is a trick one because it's
no way you know.
And Larry Fitzgerald. 11, Drew Brees. 12, Peyton Hillis. 13, Calvin Johnson, I believe so.
You're right.
14.
No way you know all this.
14, also a trick question. I believe that's the Madden 25 cover, and it's Barry Sanders, unless you got it for the new consoles, in which case Adrian Peterson
Oh my God.
was on the cover.
You're not cheating. You're not looking at.
Swear on my life. Swear on my life.
Okay. Keep on going.
15, you have Richard Sherman.
Okay.
16, hold on. 16 is Odell Beckham.
Okay.
16. 17, now this is the one I get mixed up because 17 and 18 are back-to-back Patriots.
They are.
17, I think, is Gronk, and 18 is Brady.
You are correct.
19 is Antonio Brown.
Correct.
20, Patrick Mahomes.
Oh my goodness.
21, Lamar Jackson. 22, Brady Mahomes. 23, John Madden. But yeah, dude, I'm a cover nerd when it comes to this stuff.
We now know, but that was really impressive. I don't know how.
Thank you.
That's literally 29 of them or something like that. Wow, that is. You did not miss a single one, and you even got the special editions where they had 2 people on the covers.
Monday Night Rants on Better Sports Network.
Bye weeks are so incredibly important in best ball because you can't change your lineup. You can't grab somebody off the waiver wire. You don't make changes. So you've got to be prepared. If you're taking 4 quarterbacks because you want to be sure you got to be very methodical about the schedule, especially the bye weeks.
Yeah, that's a good point by you because I don't, in redraft leagues and in especially in dynasty leagues, I don't give a damn about bye weeks in a dynasty league. I'm taking the talent that I need. Especially if it's like a startup dynasty league, man. And so, that's created situation. Matt Deutsch's league last year, I had a glut of, it was like week 9, I seem to remember. It was the bye week of death for me. Like, it's a 2 quarterback league. I had a bunch of QBs. They were like all on the bye at the same week. It was insane. At best ball, you've got to really be strategic about that. And it's almost more important than the statistics that you might put next to the player as the bye week to let you know, no, I can't go there because I got this guy, and this guy, and this guy already.
You have an opportunity to get a quarterback you want, but your first two have the same bye week. You just can't do that to yourself. You have to be thinking it through. I do pay attention to bye weeks in my drafts. I just do. It makes me a lot less of a struggle bus situation when it comes to Buymageddon. I don't want to have 4 players. I don't want to have all my wide receivers and just be playing scrubs. I don't want to have to get rid of a player that I like, that's healthy, that's performing for me just because out of desperation.
Rolling down in the deep, when your brain goes numb, you can call that mental freeze. When these people jump to
Jones, Moose, and Keith with you on this Memorial Day Monday. Hopefully you're enjoying the holiday weekend. And, Corey, the Arizona Cardinals, they tried to move him, tried to trade him time and time again, DeAndre Hopkins. And finally, the Arizona Cardinals come to a conclusion that, they get rid of DeAndre Hopkins. They cut him. They're going to take, around 22.6, I believe it is, $1 million cap hit this year. They're going to save themselves about $8 million in salary cap space. So, there you have it. But DeAndre Hopkins is now out there. Want to remind everybody, check out our friends over at fantasyalarm.com. A great piece about the fantasy football impact of DeAndre Hopkins being released by the Arizona Cardinals from our buddy Andrew Cooper. It is a good, and Fantasy Alarm's great to keep you up to date on everything going, whether it be fantasy baseball, fantasy football, whatever your fantasy needs are. They've got great breakdowns, and this is an interesting piece. But I'm going to ask you this, Corey. What do you think the fantasy impact of D-Hop is? Coming off a year in which he played 9 games last year, had 64 catches, over 700 yards, and I think 3 touchdowns, I believe it was the final number. Now, the quarterback situation, Kyler Murray struggles, then he tore his ACL. I get it. But what do you think the fantasy impact of D-Hop being out there is?
Yeah, I'm not really a type of guy who, I look at Andre Johnson and how he put together a Hall of Fame career playing with stiffs at quarterback. So I really don't give too many people, I got a bad quarterback. That's not an excuse for me. I think DeAndre Hopkins is on the wrong side of his career. I think he's washed up. I think he's starting to break down. Played 19 games the past 2 seasons. Hasn't gotten over that, back to that 1,000-yard threshold in a couple years now. Listen, through 2017 to 2020, those 4 seasons, he was fantastic. Probably the best wide receiver in the NFL. I think those days are behind. And I think NFL personnel evaluators know that as well. I think he's a player you can get on the cheap. But if you think he is the DeAndre Hopkins of 2020 or 2019, I think you got him. I think you're sadly mistaken. I hate to say it, dude from Clemson and all of that, but DeAndre Hopkins washed up.
So if he lands, say, in Baltimore with Odell Beckham Jr. and Bateman, you don't think there's a role where Hopkins can really be successful?
What is he standing on? What receiver goes to Baltimore and is successful?
Well, Beckham's going there, right?
He's not going to be successful.
They paid him $15 million and given him $3 million in incentives, right? So he can. So Beckham's going to try and be successful with Lamar Jackson. Lamar talked about the fact of, he wanted Beckham and D-Hop there in Baltimore with him. Now the Ravens have got an opportunity to do that. What about if I throw him in Kansas City? Now they've got little to no salary cap space, but what about if I throw him in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes? Hopkins can't play a significant role with the Kansas City Chiefs.
I think they got players that's younger and cheaper. That's just like Hopkins, and you probably can get Hopkins for a good price now, unless he's over inflating his own market for himself. I would rather take on some of this younger talent. A guy like D-Hop, I think he can be a good number 2 on a contender. So a place like Philadelphia and Kansas City as well, obviously they're contenders. You know what I'm saying? I would look at the Raiders. I would even possibly consider going to Cleveland and linking back up with Deshaun Watson. They had tremendous success together, and Cleveland can use another
Dallas?
piece. Yeah, Dallas is the favorite right now, and I like Dallas's wide receiver core the way it is, with Lamb being the one. I think the addition of what's my man, the archer, the bow and arrow guy, Brandon Cooks. I think Dallas likes receivers like that more so than a receiver like D-Hop, Michael Gallup on the other side. I'd be very careful with Dallas for fantasy this year. Dallas is going to be run heavy, and they're going to be rotating a lot of running backs in. I wouldn't be surprised if Dalvin Cook ends up in Dallas more so than DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, see, I think Hopkins, he's not a number one anymore. I think Hopkins has got a little bit more game than you do, and a little bit more tread left on the tires, Corey. I don't think he's washed up. I just think he's got to land in the right spot. I don't think if you're counting on DeAndre Hopkins to be your number one, then I think you're going to be left wanting. But if you tell me I give him a strong number one and he's my number two, I think then DeAndre Hopkins can be a guy that, if he stays healthy, can still really, really be impactful. Now, you mentioned Philadelphia. I think I'm good at wide receiver if I'm Philadelphia. I know they've got some cap space to be able to spend, but I've got my two stud receivers. Like, I've got A.J. Brown and I've got Smith. Like, I'm good. Like, I don't necessarily need.
You just got real low, Moose.
You hear me now?
It's a little bit tough, but yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, no, I don't know what just
there
happened.
You go.
But
there
okay, so yeah, if I were Philadelphia, I wouldn't mess with my receiver room. I think I'm good, even though I've got the cap space. If you tell me the Buffalo Bills are now going to go out there and add DeAndre Hopkins, yeah, then I could see that. I don't see the Bills. I don't think the Bills failed last year because of what they did throwing the football. I think they failed last year because they couldn't get after the quarterback, and I think they failed last year. Like, the Buffalo Bills still can't run the football. Like, at some point in time, you're going to need to be able to run it. Like, you're going to have some semblance of a running game. I'm not telling you it's going to be like basically 2 yards in a cloud of dust, but you're going to have to be able to run the football, and the Buffalo Bills have not been able to consistently run it. So I think you're adding a big name there in Buffalo, but does it really address the area of need for the Buffalo Bills? No, it does not.
Buffalo's quarterback may have regressed last season as well. He turned the football over a lot.
He suffered the elbow injury in the Jet game, right, at MetLife, and was never the same afterward.
Exactly. Turned the football over a lot. Listen, he's a guy who can run that six back, and he can be your entire offense. You got good pieces around him. I think Buffalo is built well. But I agree. The loss of Von Miller and obviously not being able to run the football effectively going on the road in the playoffs was problematic for Buffalo. Now, I think Hopkins in Buffalo makes sense, but still, fantasy-wise, he's a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 for me.
Yeah, so check out and make sure to check out Fantasy Alarm. Andrew Cooper's got that piece on DeAndre Hopkins. Cool. There's also Fantasy Baseball Injury Report, MLB Best Bets, baseball prop plays for prize picks. All this plus the award-winning DFS playbook covering 10 different sports, including tonight's Game 7 in the NBA Finals, Game 6 in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and more. Subscribe to Fantasy Alarm today. Get 50% off your first 6 months with promo code ALARM50. That's ALARM50 at fantasyalarm.com. Get started with a free trial today. He's Corey Parson. I'm Marc Malusis. I want to play a little piece of sound for you from Nikola Jokic and get your take, Corey. This happened a couple days ago, about 5-6 days ago. Here is the two-time MVP of the NBA talking about social media. Play it, Ernie.
Nikola, I know you deleted social media a long time ago. Everybody digs up old tweets. There's one where you were saying, is anyone down for a pickup basketball game back in 2011? First part is just sort of why did you delete social media? And two is how are you different from that kid back in 2011 asking for a pickup game?
You know how hard it is to find a pickup babe right now, especially in my hometown. Like, I remember the days when you can just go outside in 5 o'clock afternoon, and if you lose one pickup game, you can basically go home. And now it's really hard to find like 6 guys who can play, because we play 3-on-3. It's not a 5-on-5. So that didn't change. So if anybody wants to go play pickup, yeah, they can call me. Yeah, just because, to be honest, I follow the guys who are like playing professionally right now. That's 3x3 tournament, and they're Serbian guys are really, really, really good in that. And I think I remember back in days that how I played it, and I think maybe the talent that the engineer from upstairs gave me, it's from playing basket to playing 3-on-3 too. And why I deleted social media, I think it's a waste of time.
I think he might be right about that final comment.
But I mean, I just thought it was great, like how blunt he was talking about the fact of Jokic and mention sending a tweet out there 2011 that he wants to get a pickup basketball game and how difficult it was 12 years ago. Yeah, he's not wrong about like there. It's a necessary in what we do for our jobs. Like you have to be active on social media. Now you have to find the right balance to do it. Like if you're Nikola Jokic, like what's the need? Like why do you need to go there? And whether you're getting trolled and someone says you stink, or whether someone's kissing your rear end or someone's baiting you, what would be the positives of social media if you're a guy of the caliber? And not just Jokic, a lot of stars. And I get connecting with your fan base to an extent, continuing to build your brand, but it can be a ginormous waste of time as well.
Denver Nuggets have one of the best social media teams in sports, so they probably handle most of that stuff as far as getting his name, image, likeness, and popularity out there. So him as a professional, obviously, you know what I'm saying, international athlete, doesn't have the same thing. He wasn't on like the mixtape scene, and he wasn't out there trying to get his stuff hot on social media or Instagram. This is, a different culture, different lifestyle, and it probably is something that I really don't blame him on. You know what I'm saying? So I'm Denver Nuggets, they hit a home run with Jokic, one of the best players in the league. His game does not translate to social media, to all-stars and stuff like that. His game translates to the Denver Nuggets getting to the finals.
Yeah, he's an unbelievable talent. I mean, he just is. That continues, and I think the takeaway from these NBA playoffs, it might be, the resiliency of the Boston Celtics. It might be the resiliency of the Miami Heat, depending on how the Game 7 plays tonight. It might be, the instrument of change when you look at the roster of the Los Angeles Lakers after LeBron and company got swept away by the Denver Nuggets. I think without a shadow of a doubt, though, it's going to be, Nikola Jokic, if you didn't watch a lot of Denver games, just cementing himself as right now, and this is all fluid and could change, Corey, but right now he's the best basketball player in the world. He does it different. It might look gassed or exhausted running up the court. Everything runs through him. He shares the basketball. Teammates love playing with him. It's not like he's looking or complaining when he's not getting his numbers. He'll take the rebounds and the assists. Like there's nothing not to like about what he does it a little bit differently. It might look not as pretty all the time, but he's cemented himself, I think, as the best basketball player in the world.
You can hitch your wagon to him and win with him being your main guy, and he can carry the load and he'll do it well. He won't disappoint you. You know what I'm saying? So, see, it's a lot of other players out there. You worry about, okay, I'm going to put the ball in this guy's hand and see where he can take me. One thing with Jokic is, you know how far he can take you. And now with Jamal Murray back, it's like what I tell people about Jokic is, these games, they be sweeping teams, and then Jokic won't have a point in the fourth quarter. Unbelievable. He is a true facilitator for that team right there, and he kind of makes the whole thing. He's the straw that stirs the drink. There you go.
He is. It's the old line that they used to talk about with Reggie. Well, the one that Reggie Jackson talked about.
Yeah, that's when Reggie Jackson talked about himself.
Correctly. Which ticked off Thurman Munson, a lot of Yankees in that clubhouse. When during the Bronx Zoo days of the New York Yankees.
We do the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio, right? And most years, I think 3 of the past 4 years I've been out there. The first year I went, the Yankees was in Cleveland. Sunday morning, getting ready to go back to the airport, and the Uber driver meets me outside. He sees I have a Yankee hat on, right? And he goes, "Are you a fan?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He was like, "Do you know what's across the street?" I was like, "No." He was like, "Thurman Munson's buried right across the street." I was like, "You're kidding me." And he took me back there. He said, "You got a minute?" I said, "Yeah, I got plenty of time." And we drove across the street, and there was a cemetery across the street, and he took me to Thurman Munson's grave right there in Canton, Ohio.
Wow!
Did you know he was buried in Canton, Ohio?
I did. I knew it was Ohio. I did not know it was Canton.
Yep. Mm-hmm. You can go walk right back up there. It's a pair of uniform pants back there. Everything. I was floored when I saw it. You can walk right up on it.
Really?
Yep.
I did not know it was Canton, Ohio. And it's right across the street?
It was right across the street from the hotel I was staying at that trip.
Gotcha.
It was right. I took some photos of it, put it on Instagram. I was like, I had no clue Thurman Munson was buried in Canton, Ohio.
No, I had no idea. No idea about that. We'll come back. We'll get into the comments. Some interesting comments from Le'Veon Bell. Number one, about Sam Darnold. Number two, about potentially making a mistake with his contract negotiations with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Which is amazing when you think about it, if you're Le'Veon Bell. Looking back on the fact of how petty he was when they were offering him basically $14.8 million, but didn't want to play under the cap, or the tag, I should say, the franchise tag for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll get into that. We'll do that next. He's Corey Parson. I'm Marc Malusis. It's Moose and Keith with you on a Memorial Day Monday right here, Better Sports Network.
Vegas Raiders have traded up to 35, and they give up the 38th overall pick. In addition, a 5th-round pick goes to Indianapolis as the Colts trade down. The pick is in. And, Coop, your top 2 tight ends, best tight ends available, are now off the board as Michael Mayer is going to be the Darren Waller replacement in Las Vegas, catching balls from Jimmy Garoppolo, maybe somebody else in the future. But Michael Mayer is off the board. The Raiders have traded up. And I always look at this, too, from like dynasty fantasy football standpoint. I always like the guys that are traded up for. Michael Mayer gets traded up for as he is off the board now at pick 35. He goes to the Raiders. How does he fit in this system? Not only with Jimmy Garoppolo, but also Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, some significant pass catchers there, including Hunter Renfrow now.
Eric, I love that you pointed that out, because that's the part of the draft that people forget when they're doing their analysis. They think about the draft capital, they think about the landing spot, they forget the draft narrative, right? This proves to us that the Raiders, at the very least, had Michael Mayer as high as Sam Laporta, or maybe even higher, because they're looking around and saying, all right, that guy's gone. We have to get this guy right now. And this guy probably is a better fit for what Josh McDaniel wants to do. He's used to Rob Gronkowski. He's used to Hunter Henry, these two-way tight ends that can block and run routes down the seam. Sam Laporta is not going to do that. He's only 240 pounds. This guy is your prototypical real-life tight end. That's why a lot of people were saying he's the best real tight end in the draft. Clearly, pass catching is at a premium. That's why Dalton Kincaid and Sam Laporta went first. But this guy's going to fit really well into that scheme. My question is, when does he become fantasy relevant? Because the vast majority of tight ends that are fantasy relevant are top 2 targets on their team, with Devontae Adams there and Jacoby Myers there,
that's not happening.
And Hunter Renfrow there. I mean, when does it happen, Moose? How long do we have to wait?
Yeah, forever. It might be a while. I mean, when you look at it, but I do think he's a great fit.
Let me talk to you, Vlad, about an award here that I thought was very, very debatable. And it was Cy Young in the National League. In terms of odds, it's Strider at plus 230, Zach Gallen at plus 215, Clayton Kershaw plus 1,000. Clayton Kershaw, to me, his numbers are phenomenal and better, or at least right there with these other two. Strider was my preseason pick to win the award. But Clayton Kershaw at plus 1,000 compared to these other guys with similar numbers in the plus 200s. Like, let's bang on Kershaw and hope he doesn't get hurt, right? Where are you at with that, Vlad?
Yeah, those are great odds. I think the only concern that fantasy players and Dodgers fans had before the season started was innings limitations. Just wanting to make sure that he is fully ramped up for the playoffs. And as some teams do, you sometimes get those phantom IL stints. And we might see that sometime, maybe around the All-Star break with Kershaw, just to preserve his arm over the second half of the season. But man, he's a great pick. If you're telling me those are the odds, that's really, really nice. I do love your Spencer Strider pick. I think that's what I would have done in the preseason and bet on him. He's an absolute beast. So, but Clayton Kershaw at plus 1,000, those are phenomenal odds. And you mentioned Zach Gallen. He's incredible too. And looks like Arizona has been in the hunt there in the playoff. Well, so far it's early. Dodgers, maybe Padres will be in competition for that division. But yeah, that's a nice 3-way race, and we might see some other players pop in there.
Corey Parson, Marc Malusis with you. Le'Veon Bell was on the let me get this right. He was on a podcast, which is the Steal Here podcast. It's a podcast that focuses in on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Going to play you, I'm not going to play you, but I'll read you some comments here, Corey, from Le'Veon Bell, the former, Pro Bowl running back. And number one is talking about the contract. He played with Pittsburgh 2013 to 17, sat out 2018 because of a contract battle with the team. Said, looking back on it, that's what I did. He commented that it was petty because they tagged him, didn't want to play under, I think he was due to make around tad over $14 million, didn't want to play for the $14 million. Also said and mentioned that he'd smoked marijuana before games. He said he smoked all the time. He said he'd smoke and then go out there and run for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Talking about his time with the New York Jets, 2019, 2 games in 2020, said gets to New York, that's when you instantly find out that head coaches make a huge difference. As soon as I got to New York, I found out that out the first week, bro, this team wasn't that great. But don't get me wrong, but I feel like Coach Tomlin was coaching that team. We win 9 games at least. It's the point where Sam Darnold didn't even know the actual line protections because he's so confused about our offense because the coach is so confused because the coach is confusing him, saying that Gase was terrible at calling plays. The Jets went 7-9 in 2019. Bell ran for 789 yards and 3 touchdowns on 245 carries. So at one point in time, Le'Veon Bell was the number one running back, was as good of a running back as there was in the National Football League. Didn't age that particularly well. I think looking back on it, taking an entire year off in 2018 really didn't help him, probably hurt him, and he probably should have taken the money then. Couple of things. Number one is looking back, of course, missing out on that money. How would anyone not have instant regret? Number two, the idea of him smoking marijuana even before football games. Number three, the criticism that you heard of Adam Gase in New York with the Jets when he was the head coach.
All right, let's start with the clear and obvious one. People were saying that this year that Lamar Jackson won't play on the franchise tag. He'll sit the season out. I remember saying nobody's as stupid as Le'Veon Bell. Nobody's going to leave $14 million on the table. That's exactly what he did. He said, I was trying to change things for the rest of the league. You don't change things in the NFL. You come into the NFL and you become a part of it. So that's right there. Now let's talk about going from the Pittsburgh Steelers to the New York Jets. We spent the first 40 minutes of this show talking about heat culture. There is no better culture in sports than the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it may not be any worse than the New York Jets, particularly with Adam Gase as the head coach. What did you think was going to happen when you went to the Time Warner building and Jenny Ventris interviewed you in a broom closet when you signed with the New York Jets? Did you think you was going to go into some situation that was going to be remotely close to what was being built in the Pittsburgh Steelers? And he's right. You see with Mike Tomlin, Antonio Brown, Ben Roethlisberger, every prima donna that you can think of was there in that locker room, and Mike Tomlin was able to control it and win with these guys every single year. And then the marijuana smoking thing, he is not the only one. I would say the majority of the players is probably getting high before they come to the stadium. It's everybody. A lot of Sunday mornings, you'll have a lot of dudes drinking liquor to take the nerves off. Ron Artest famously went to the liquor store at halftime when he was playing in Chicago. Most Sundays, I would say close to 50% of the players probably have some kind of substance in their system, like marijuana, alcohol, or something like that, to get through the game to calm their nerves. I truly believe that.
Yeah.
I was in Arizona
right
with a Major League Baseball player, and he told me straight up, he was like, it was days that I was going to the game, and I knew I was going to be 0 for 4 because I was high out of my mind coming into the clubhouse.
That's so surprising. Maybe I'm being naive. I don't know, Corey. That's so surprising to me.
No, not to me, not at all. You watch what's I Am Athlete, and what's the one the Pivot, these shows with Ryan Clark and these guys that's on the internet. A lot of these athletes talk about how their drug addiction, their alcohol addiction, and they were all of them, not I want to say all of them, but a lot of them are taking substances before. Me and you couldn't even think. I couldn't do a show high. But you know what I'm saying? But,
yeah, but I'm also, I don't know. I mean, maybe your body starts to react to it if you're doing it consistently on an everyday basis. I don't know. Like, I agree with you. I could not do what I do inebriated. I could not do what I do high. I could not be able to focus, could not be able to maintain, a consistent thought process, have a conversation, be fun, all the things that we talked about. I mean, maybe I'd be funny in certain aspects because I probably wouldn't stop laughing. I couldn't do it. So I like the idea, I mean, of going out and smoking pot before a game and then running for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, it shows you just how athletically gifted Le'Veon Bell is. I agree with you. I mean, it was idiotic, for Bell to be there. There's such a short time that you can make that kind of money.
Yep.
And as a professional athlete, especially when you're looking at the shelf life of running backs in the National Football League, where there's consistent turnover at that position, how do you sit out an entire year and just be like, okay, I'm going to be A-okay? And his career was never the same. Like
Never.
he wasn't the same running back with the Jets, and then got cut by the Jets, signed with the Chiefs, and then played a little bit with Baltimore and Tampa, and then his career was over. I mean, that was
done.
it. And if he stayed, and let's be honest, Corey, like if he stayed in Pittsburgh, I mean, at one point in time, that big three of Roethlisberger, Bell, and Brown were unbelievable. Look at how all those careers ended. Roethlisberger at the end couldn't throw the football. Antonio Brown's getting set to play what in the indoor league? What league did he just sign up for? Antonio Brown.
I think he's playing for the team he owns that the players are not getting paid, so he may have to go out there and play.
Right,
Antonio Brown, the Albany Empire, or something like that.
Yeah, so that's Antonio Brown. Look at how his career came to an end, running off the field as a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and now you have Le'Veon Bell hopping on a podcast talking about the fact that he was smoking pot before games, regret about not, being petty and not signing the deal and the negotiations with the Steelers. And the fact that, Gase was a terrible head coach. Listen, we all saw how bad of a head coach Adam Gase was. He was terrible.
Yeah. No, he was. But listen, I think now that you kind of see, now that Le'Veon Bell is talking, what you see is basically he was an athlete, but he wasn't a professional athlete. Professional athletes come to the game sober. Professional athletes work on their body. Professional athletes do what they need to do to have long, extended careers. Athletes do stuff like what Le'Veon Bell did. He sat that season out and made a rap album.
Yeah.
And was robbed by 2 strippers that he had living in his house.
Yeah.
That's not how professional athletes live.
No, that is not. You're right about that. That is not the way that professional athletes go about their business. There's now guys that take care of their bodies. I mean, compare that story with the fact that LeBron James, spends about $1 million on his body every single year to make sure he's in peak physical condition. I mean, that is a night and day difference. I also thought it was interesting, when I mentioned Roethlisberger, did you see the story that came out last week that he was rooting against Kenny Pickett?
Yeah.
Have success early on. Like, if you're Roethlisberger, like, okay, be open and honest. And I get it's a competitive world. Like, your job is on the line until you establish yourself, especially when you're looking at guys that are on the outer edges of a roster, right? 47 to 53 special teams players, guys that are like, 4th or 5th defensive backs on teams, whatever it might be when you're looking at the National Football League, Corey. But like, if you're Roethlisberger, why would you root against Kenny Pickett? I mean, you're a Hall of Famer. You've already won. You can't play anymore. That's why you're out of the league. Like, why would you root against a guy that was a monumental star for the Pitt Panthers and, was a Heisman Trophy contender his final year at Pitt, and now is the Steelers quarterback here? Why would you, if you're Roethlisberger, it's great to be open and honest. I just don't understand why you would root against him.
Because that's what Ben Roethlisberger showed that he was the last 4 years of his career. It's not like that last year. He wasn't just washed up that last year. That when it was visible. They had been wanting him to leave 3 years before that, but he kept holding the organization hostage. And this is one of the things that I think when Mike Tomlin's career is over, he's going to regret not getting rid of Ben Roethlisberger or being extremely loyal to Ben Roethlisberger down the stretch. By the time Roethlisberger left, he could barely get the ball past the line of scrimmage. But those 3 years before, he wasn't good either. And they were drafting quarterbacks. And Roethlisberger would say, okay, I'm going to retire. He would always hold them hostage. So you can tell Roethlisberger wasn't going to be kind to any quarterback that was coming in. And when Pickett got there, Roethlisberger was gone. But Roethlisberger wants to be Terry Bradshaw. He wants to be looked at as the greatest quarterback in Pittsburgh Steelers history. I'm very funny, Moose, when it comes to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I know that Ben Roethlisberger is going to go in, but is Ben Roethlisberger really that good of a quarterback his days in Pittsburgh? I'm not sure. You look at Eli Manning. Is Eli Manning a Hall of Famer? In my book, yeah, because he got the 2 championships. But Ben Roethlisberger nor Eli Manning had a better career than Steve McNair. And Steve McNair will probably never get in.
Yeah, I would agree that McNair was. I love Steve McNair out of Alcorn State. So you're preaching in the choir. I would even put McNair in. I think Roethlisberger is more of a Hall of Fame candidate than Eli.
Yes, I would agree. What about Rivers?
Yes, yeah. I Rivers never won a Super Bowl, but I do think Rivers did enough over the course of his career to get into the Hall of Fame. I do.
See, it's so funny with these quarterbacks that have.
But of those 3, if you're asking me, like, which guy I would die on the hill for, I would tell you it's Roethlisberger.
I would agree. I would go Roethlisberger, then I would go Manning, and then I would go Rivers. But I would have McNair over both of them. And then you look Tony Romo and Donovan McNabb. They're basically the same, and I don't think either one of them gets in.
No, they don't. I mean, McNabb lost too many. I mean, if you're going to make now we're going down the rabbit hole of trying to decipher what is a Hall of Famer. I do think you have to win championships, right? I mean, to an extent. I agree with you about McNair. I do think there can be the separator based on everything he did to his team and how remarkably tough he was. Like the thing about Roethlisberger, I think he was a great regular season quarterback, remarkably tough, took a ton of hits, and he was a good postseason player. Eli wasn't a great regular season quarterback.
Not at all.
He was clutch in 2 great runs, 2007, 2011. That's where Eli Manning then is, you look at him as potentially being a Hall of Fame quarterback. Rivers was great in the regular season. His teams, though, had disastrous failures after great regular seasons. But Phillip Rivers was a very, very good regular season quarterback and put up some gaudy numbers when he was leading that Chargers franchise. And let's be honest, I mean, the 1 year in Indianapolis, he was really good. I mean,
he played well.
Yeah, he played well. I mean, of the veteran quarterbacks the Colts brought in, I mean, he was by far better than any of the other 2. I mean,
he's better than
Ryan was a disaster last year, and Carson Wentz they couldn't wait to get rid of. I mean, and Phillip Rivers, I'm sure they made a call to him, be like, "Are you sure you don't want to play 1 more year?" Rivers was good in Indianapolis, so McNair, I agree with you. I think he deserves his day in the Hall of Fame. I think of those 3 of that quarterback class, I would tell you Roethlisberger more than anybody else, but I think they're probably all 3 eventually going to get in.
Yeah, I think all 3 eventually get in. I think Rivers is going to be tough, but Big Ben is a Pittsburgh Steeler, and Eli Manning has that last name and those 2 remarkable Super Bowls, right? But, not to go down this rabbit hole, but then let's look at Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco has gone into Denver and beat – but Moose, he's going into Denver and beat Peyton Manning. He's going into New England and beat Tom Brady. He has beaten he's going into Pittsburgh and beat Ben Roethlisberger. He's beaten all the best quarterbacks in the AFC in their building in the postseason. And people act like he's trash.
I'm not saying he's trash, but it's like the same conversation we had about Carmelo Anthony. Okay. So like Flacco had a really good career. He bet on himself, as the old cliche goes, and he got paid after winning the Super Bowl down in New Orleans by the Baltimore Ravens. But just because he did all that and got all the money that he was looking for set up for the rest of his life, Corey, I also don't think it's an insult to say I don't think Joe Flacco's a Hall of Famer. Like, am I going to if I'm a Raven fan, I'm going to remember Joe Flacco because he won a Super Bowl. But if I'm just a football fan, was Joe Flacco's career that memorable? Like, Steve McNair's career was more memorable than Joe Flacco's career. I could make an argument Rivers' career was more memorable than Joe Flacco. I mean, are we going to go and look at Matt Ryan? Do you think Matt Ryan deserves to be in the Hall of Fame? No, I don't think
he's
Matt
borderline,
Ryan.
No.
He's borderline, but do I think Matt Ryan did enough? I mean, but you're going to say, well, he won an MVP of the league. Great. I agree. He got his team to the Super Bowl. Fair. They also collapsed when they were leading that game 28-3 and had one of the epic meltdowns in the history of professional sports. So is Matt Ryan then going to get into the Hall of Fame? I don't know if I look at Matt Ryan and say, yeah, no doubt about it, he's for sure a Hall of Famer in his career. Like there are guys then they're eventually whittling down the list of guys that I thought that should have gotten in, like Joe Klecko this year. Like Joe Klecko to me was a guy that I thought for the Jets years ago, being part of that sack exchange, being an all-pro at two different positions along that defensive line. I thought Joe Klecko deserved to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame eventually, and finally this year he's getting in. When you get to the quarterbacks, that's where you kind of have to decipher of where are you? Are you a numbers guy or are you a winning guy?
You see, and that's the thing about the Pro Football or the NFL Hall of Fame that's so interesting is because in the NFL, we give props to champions. Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger. You know what I'm saying? They're champions. Whereas other sports, we look at the numbers. You know what I'm saying? And you look at baseball. It's not about the championships. It's about the numbers and the records. And in basketball, it's about those accomplishments as well. In football, just like you have to be a champion, which I don't know if that's fair.
Well, I think with certain players, I think with the quarterback position.
Yeah, and that's
the thing.
The quarterbacks are judged on winning Super Bowls, except for Joe Flacco, though.
No, for sure, right? And okay, so you look at quarterbacks. I think quarterbacks winning or winning championships factors in deciphering, who deserves to get there and who doesn't. I think the era that you play in, the numbers are more gaudy now because it's a passing league because of the limitations of what you can do in defensive secondaries as compared to years ago. I think when you're looking at, say, all-time great NBA players, I think it hurts you. You can't be part of the conversation if you never won. Like if, you never won. Like I have discussions with, younger friends of mine that don't remember Charles Barkley as a player. Love him as an analyst. And be like, well, he didn't win anything. I go, but you don't understand. Like Barkley was a great NBA player. Like he was an all-star. He was an impact player, but he never won. Well, I understand he never won, but he was still an all-time great. Like you could look at it and say, well, that's takes Barkley out of any, limits him in terms of those conversations when you look at his historical importance. But yeah, I think it's in the NFL. I think it's dependent on the position you play. I think for quarterbacks, it's not just about stats. I think you have to have an impact in the most important position of whether or not you won.
Yeah, and I think that kind of is like unfair to some of these quarterbacks. Steve McNair was, literally 1 yard away from being a Super Bowl champion. And we saw, what he was able to do in his career. Tony Romo, one of the most prolific quarterbacks. I think maybe the most prolific quarterback in Dallas Cowboy history. And it's like no shot. Donovan McNabb, another great quarterback. McNabb was with the 5 straight NFC championship games. He probably won't sniff the Hall of Fame. So I'm like, are we really judging these quarterbacks fairly when guys like Sonny Jurgensen and Kurt Warner is in the Hall of Fame? Let that sink in. Kurt Warner had like 2 or 3 good seasons, and he's in Canton. And I'm like, that to me, we get the quarterback, you win a championship, you go in. I don't know if that's right.
It's fair. I do think Warner's a Hall of Famer. I think you can make an argument about Romo, but I think Warner, what he did with the Rams, and then what he did that secondary career, what he had with the Cardinals, I think Kurt Warner did enough. I do. But speaking of quarterbacks, and interesting thing, couple of things. Number one, from the NFL, Garoppolo. So if you've not been following along, the news came down over the course of the last 24, 48 hours about Jimmy Garoppolo and the Vegas Raiders. And in essence, Jimmy Garoppolo, when he signed his contract in March with Vegas, and it was a 3-year deal, I think $72 million, leaving the San Francisco 49ers, he failed his physical because of the left foot injury that he suffered last year with the San Francisco 49ers that ended his season and began the renaissance of Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, and his rise in the National Football League. So here's where we stand with Jimmy Garoppolo and the Vegas Raiders. If he doesn't pass, they had to amend his contract. So the signing bonus got transferred over to salary in 2023. Here's the trick, though. If Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't pass his physical, the San Francisco 49ers can get out from underneath his contract and not have to pay him $1. The Raiders can get out from underneath his contract and not have to pay him $1. So now he's got time. He's got to pass that physical, I think, by game 1. So he's got time to pass that physical, but I guess they were so concerned about the state of that left foot and that foot injury he suffered last year with the 49ers that now there's concerns. Imagine if the Vegas Raiders, imagine if Garoppolo doesn't pass his physical with Vegas and they basically send Carr away. They bring Garoppolo in, and you're the Vegas Raiders, and you're looking at Stidham as potentially your starting quarterback out there in Vegas, who, I mean, is okay. I get it, but
is Stidham still even there, though?
I thought he was still there. Is he not the backup quarterback?
Stidham may not be there any longer. Stidham may have gone someplace else. I like Stidham, right? I'm a stud ham, as I call him. I'm a stud him. I'm a supporter of his. Jimmy Garoppolo is their guy, though. You gotta this is the brain trust.
Josh McDaniel.
Yeah, this is McDaniels. This is the brain trust. Lombardi is over there too. He's the OC over there. This is the brain trust that Stidham's in. Denver.
He's not there. Brian Hoyer and Aiden O'Connell.
Yes, Brian Hoyer is another guy that comes from this system, right? This is the Garoppolo is their quarterback that they found. This is the guy that they brought in to replace Tom Brady, but Kraft wouldn't let him. I guarantee you they're going to do everything that's a very complicated offense, and nobody knows it better than Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think Jimmy Garoppolo takes the Raiders to the playoffs this year.
I do. Now, do you think are you concerned, though, if you're a Raider fan listening or reading this story? It was as broken by Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, and others just before the holiday weekend. Are you concerned about where a historically injured Garoppolo, who's successful, when he was a starter in San Francisco, he was 41-19 in the regular season.
The only Kyle Shanahan quarterback that wins.
Went to an NFC championship game. Like Jimmy Garoppolo, as limited as Kyle Shanahan thinks he is, and that's why they wanted to get out from underneath him and move on. As limited as that is, Jimmy Garoppolo wins football games. Are you concerned right now, if you're a Raider fan, where the health of that foot is? The fact that he failed the physical, and Vegas now has language in the contract to where if he doesn't pass his next physical, that they don't have to pay him and they can get out from underneath the contract. Then it's Brian Hoyer at quarterback.
Yeah, and then it's Caleb Williams at quarterback next year, because Brian Hoyer is not going to get you anything but, you know what I'm saying, down there with the Arizona Cardinals battling for the first pick in the draft. Now, Devontae Adams just came out and gave full support to the organization, gave full support to Jimmy Garoppolo. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But I am very optimistic about the Raiders this season.
You are?
I am.
Based on
Jimmy Garoppolo being there. Jimmy Garoppolo being in that offense he's familiar with.
Do you take
Devontae Adams had a tremendous season last year. Nobody's talking about it because it got held back because of Derek Carr. Derek Carr was not good last year. He wasn't. But listen, a lot of people, their first year in this McDaniels offense is not good. It's just the way it is. Josh Jacobs led the NFL in rushing. They lost 11 games, 9 of them by 1 score or less. I think this Raider team is ready for a breakout. I think the Raiders are pushing up, and I think the Vikings, who had that 13-win season, they push down.
Well, Devontae Adams just wants to remind everybody that he's not a product of Aaron Rodgers. By the way, did anyone actually think Devontae Adams was a product of Aaron Rodgers?
No. No, I didn't.
I mean, that's like LeBron James telling everybody he's going to retire, or thinking about, or contemplating his future after the Lakers got swept by the Denver Nuggets. Meanwhile, for 3 years, he's talked about the fact he wants to play in the NBA with his son.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, he's using that moment, and people are running with it. Oh, what would it look like in NBA without LeBron James? My friends, he's not retiring. Just like we all saw Devontae Adams. Like, Devontae Adams is the best receiver in the National Football League. And then, he was not a product of Aaron Rodgers getting him the football. What we saw last year in Green Bay was the fact that Aaron Rodgers severely missed Devontae Adams.
Yep, 100%. So I'm not worried about that. As far as LeBron goes, Moose, I expect LeBron James to be playing in Los Angeles Lakers.
Yes.
And you know what I'm saying? Now, listen, here's the thing. If the Lakers were smart, I don't think the Lakers think they're going to get the first pick in the draft in 2025. Or what's that, 2024. So, and Bronny is not a first pick type of player. He's probably a back end of the lottery type of guy. But LeBron James is not going to re-sign with the Lakers next year. This is going to be his last year in Los Angeles. This is when you're supposed to trade him.
Right, and I get but now, I mean, I've seen people speculate about trading him to Golden State. there's been some people throwing out there, hey, maybe the Knicks could be a spot that LeBron James can land in. I mean, come on now.
We've done this for so many years. Giannis in 2026.
Yes, I know. I know. Well,
nobody wants to
don't play that game.
Story.
I love the story, Corey, where the Knicks are closely monitoring the Giannis in Milwaukee and whether or not he's happy. I mean, can we get serious here? Like, Giannis is not leaving Milwaukee. He's never going to end up in New York with the Knicks. Like you were mentioning, when does it change? When does it turn? I don't know. I mean, I think it started to turn for the Knicks with Jalen Brunson, but can you really envision the Lakers trading LeBron James?
No, because of, basically that's just a big piece to move because what he does at the box office. But this is still the Lakers. The Lakers are bigger. The organization is bigger than LeBron James. The smart thing to do would be to trade the player that is not going to re-sign. You know what I mean?
I don't disagree with that. I just can't envision the Lakers trying to win next year and saying we're going to move on from LeBron James.
I would agree with you on that. And think about somebody told me this a long time ago. When athletes go to New York want to go to New York to win a championship, they go to the Yankees, not the Knicks.
Well, right.
And that hasn't been true in a long time either.
Well, yeah, and the Yankees haven't been to a World Series since 2009. They won it. They beat the Philadelphia Phillies. And, the Knicks haven't, been back to the NBA Finals since 99. So it's been a while. I mean, the Rangers haven't been back to the Stanley Cup Finals since, well, not all that long ago, but it was Lundqvist and the Rangers, and they lost to Los Angeles Kings. So, yeah, I agree with you. You don't go – right now, I do have confidence in the Knicks, but we'll see exactly what they do and the pieces they move and the decision they make whether or not to move on from Julius Randle. Game 7 tonight. We got about a minute and a half. Let's close it out here, Corey, because I'm going to get the popcorn out. Like, I can't wait. Like, I hope we get – well, here's what I hope. I hope midway through the fourth quarter, I'm watching at home, and I don't know who's going to win.
I want it to be the same way. I want it to be the same way. I'm going typical Game 7 rules. I'm taking the underdog, but obviously in the Game 7, the best bet is always the under. So hit that under. I'm going to be on the Miami Heat. I think it's a one possession game. I like the Heat to win the game. If Boston jumps out early, Boston's going to hammer them.
Yeah, Boston jumps out early. If this game is 20-7, timeout Spoelstra, 7 minutes to go in the opening quarter, that does not look good for Miami.
No, it doesn't. But Miami's not going to quit at 20-7. Miami may quit at 54-34, though.
Yeah, I just don't want to see that. I don't. No, Corey, it's a blast. Enjoy your holiday. Enjoy your Memorial Day. As Corey mentioned, thank our servicemen and women for everything that they do. That is what today is all about. Have a great rest of your Monday. Keep it locked right here, Better Sports Network.